Good morning. Good morning. Dan and I are going to start with the song Morning is Broken. Please stand if you'd like and sing with us. We're going to do, it's number 38. We're going to do 3 verses and then end with the first verse once again.
Thank you, Dan and Madeline. What an excellent start to our service this morning. Welcome, everyone. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dave. I'm going to applaud you, too. You're going to get a louder applaud from me, my friend. So good to see you. Oh, and there's Jane. Jane, good to have you. Yep. It's good to have all of you. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, where we join together to create a nourishing, liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world. Or, as we like to say in short, to create community, find meaning, and work for justice. We also like to begin by welcoming you to this space, all that you bring with you, your unique beliefs, your background, your lifestyle, your experiences, your differences. All that helps make you who you are is welcome here this morning. So glad to have you, whether you're a regular to our community or joining us more recently or even for the first time today, you're equally as welcome. And this includes the many of you who are live streaming with us today as well. Great to have everybody, wherever you are. I have a few announcements to make today. I want to begin. You'll notice that our Unity candle is lit at the front of our sanctuary. This is something we do when we have lost one of our members during the week or close to it. And some of you probably saw in the paper that our longtime and really beloved church member, Evan Armstrong, passed away last Saturday on the 28th at age 88 years old. Evan was, as long as he could come, he was a regular here. And I mean, what a wonderful, friendly, funny, intelligent, active, involved, helpful, all the qualities that make somebody a good person, he demonstrated for us. And I think about one of the first things he did when I came. I guess it had already been commissioned when I came, but we did not actually have a chalice in our sanctuary. And this is a chalice that a particular artist had fashioned, and it's gotten around a little bit in the Unitarian Universalist world. And Evan saw it and met the artist and got some folks from the congregation to contribute and actually commissioned to have this made for us. And it was actually a bit of a controversy, because as I often say, in Unitarians, you can believe whatever you want, but don't move the furniture. And so, but because I was so new, a lot of folks gave me grace and helped us bring the new chalice into the sanctuary, and it's become such a important part of our worship together. And I think about Evan every Sunday because of this chalice, and I'll continue to think of him every Sunday because of our chalice. So Evan, thank you so much. His family has planned. He was into a lot of different things in the community, so they've planned something for this Wednesday, November 8th at 10 a.m. It's going to be at the Shado Park Public Library. It's a bit of short notice, but it's happening this Wednesday, Shado Park Public Library Event Center, which is on Wellesley Avenue, 2111 Wellesley to be exact. Also want to remind you that next Sunday after our second service, we will have a Thanksgiving potluck. Church will provide the sliced turkey, but if you want to bring a dish to share, that would make it all the more wonderful. And hope you'll plan on coming and staying for that as well. And of course, today we are going to be celebrating Deb Jackman, her 34 years with us, who recently retired. And there's going to be a brief program following the service. I think we'll include a bio break, is that right? Or are we going to move right into it? Bio break's okay? So after the service, take a bio break, but if you'll come back to the sanctuary for a brief service, we're just going to include some music and some comments, and then we'll go back and we'll have a bit more of an informal party after that. So that's in, of course, a celebration of Deborah Jackman, who was part of our music program for 34 years. So, okay, yeah, that was everything. So why don't we take a few minutes here to greet one another this morning. You don't have to walk far today. You can just turn around and say hi to whoever's in the vicinity, right? All right, and obviously there'll be more time to visit with one another after our services this afternoon, so please stay for that. But we are going to move forward now by lighting this beautiful chalice today in honor of Evan Armstrong. It is a symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need, and may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
Concerning the question of life's meaning, Lao Tzu proposes a deep understanding of the essence of existence, which is mysterious. Meaning comes from being a product of the world itself. We, like the rivers and trees, are part of the way, which is made of everything and makes everything, and cannot ever truly be known or spoken of. Life matters because we exist within and among living things as part of an enduring and incomprehensible chain of existence.
Please stand as you're willing and able and join me for number 1008 in the teal hymnal, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place.
1, 2, and 1.
When our hearts are in a holy place, when our hearts are in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our hearts are in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our hearts are in a holy place. When our hearts are in a holy place, when our hearts are in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our hearts are in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our hearts are in a holy place. When our hearts are in a holy place, when our hearts are in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our hearts are in a holy place, when we share the silence of a sacred space, and the God of our hearts stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our hearts are in a holy place. When our hearts are in a holy place, when our hearts are in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our hearts are in a holy place, when our hearts are in a holy place.
We'll now kindle our candles of care for those who are most on our hearts and minds this morning. And we begin, as we have been for some time now, with a candle on behalf of the people of Ukraine in that region of the world that are being impacted by the terrible violence there, as well now as the many people in Israel and Palestine that are caught up in a wave of hate and violence in that part of the world. And we continue to kindle a candle for church member Jacob Johns, who is still in the hospital recovering from the terrible effects of being shot while at a peaceful demonstration in Albuquerque several weeks ago now. So let's take a moment of silence as usual on behalf of others you might be thinking of, and you'd be welcome to name them aloud at this time if you'd like. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion. And we now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which helps sustain this community and our mission to the larger world.
now pronounce your wife and wife.
Thank you so much. Wow. We're now going to have our story for all ages. If there's any folks who want to come up to the front and join us up here, yay! I see some. All right. I've brought a friend with me that we haven't seen for a while, but I think we all really like this friend. Oh, hey, this is my friend Purple. Purple, it's so good to see you. Will you say hello to everyone? Purple, would you please say hello? Okay, don't worry. If I can't get Purple to talk, I don't think anybody can. So, Purple, what's bothering you? Would you please tell me what it is? Oh, why not? Why won't you talk to me? I'm mad at you. You're mad at me? What did I do? You're just like everyone else. You're always trying to put words into my mouth. Well, can you give me an example? Not until you promise to let me speak for myself. Well, okay, I promise. Go ahead. So, Purple, how about just telling me what this is all about? Will that work? Well, yesterday some kids at school said I look like Oscar the Grouch. And some said I look like the Grinch who stole Christmas. And they wanted me to say grouchy and grinchy things. And I don't know how to say grouchy and grinchy things, so they started making fun of me and laughing at me. Oh, I'm so sorry that the other kids laughed at you, Purple. That's no fun, is it? And that they tried to get you to say things words that don't belong to you. As Unitarians, we believe that people should be free to speak for themselves, right? Yeah, people should be free to, and they should be able to say what they want. Really? Really? That reminds me of a story. No, that's okay. I get your point. No, it's no problem. I want to tell it. Well, it's a free country. Go ahead. Okay. All right. Well, this is a story about a beautiful, very rare rainbow zebra. It has a zebra with rainbow colors, and it was captured and caged at a zoo, and it became their most special and favorite attraction. But after a while, they noticed that the rainbow zebra started to fade, and it faded and faded and faded until it was just like any other zebra, just black and white. Well, they were losing a lot of visitors, and they decided to hire some famous painters to come in and repaint the zebra. And the famous painter repainted it, but the next day, the zebra was black and white again. So they hired more painters. And no matter how many times they tried to paint the zebra, every morning they woke up and the zebra was black and white. Until one day, there was an old lady sitting outside the zoo. She sat outside the zoo every day waving at the zebra. And she was very sad to see it lose its color. So she came in and she whispered something in the zebra's ear. And before long, the zebra's got all of its color back. It was beautiful rainbow colors again. And when asked what she said, I whispered that you will be free again someday. Well, the zookeepers realized their mistake, and they released the rainbow zebra back into the wild where it was free and colorful. So you see, Purple, it's important to let people freely express themselves because that's what makes us all so colorful and makes us happy. That's a good story. Well, I'm glad. Do you feel better now? Yes, I think I had my color back. I think you do. Thank you so much, Purple. We're going to thank you. We'll sing our yes. Bye-bye. See you later.
For this morning's meditation, a few words on the process of reflection. Without reflection, we go blindly on our way, creating more unintended consequences and failing to achieve anything useful. And from John Dewey, we do not learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience.
I'd like to dedicate this to Deborah Jackman, whose voice here, there, and everywhere.
To lead a better life, I need my love to be here, making each day of the year, changing my life with a wave of her hand. Nobody can deny that there's something there, running my hands through her hair, both of us thinking how good it can be. Someone is speaking, but she doesn't know he's there. I want her everywhere, and if she's beside me, I know I need never care. But to love her is to need her everywhere, knowing that love is to share. Each one believing that love never dies, watching their eyes and hoping I'm always there. I want her everywhere, and if she's beside me, I know I need never care. But to love her is to need her everywhere, knowing that love is to share. Each one believing that love never dies, watching her eyes and hoping I'm always there. I will be there and everywhere, here, there, and everywhere.
Thank you both so much. After a performance like that, I just have to humbly slither up to the pulpit and offer a sermon. That was beautiful. Thank you. So in his essay explaining what the Enlightenment is, Immanuel Kant said nothing is required for this enlightenment except freedom. And the freedom in question is the least harmful of all, namely the freedom to use reason publicly in all matters. The freedom to use reason publicly in all matters. These words, written in 1784, refer to what we now call freedom of speech. Such freedom is one of the defining qualities of liberalism and is a fundamental principle of our liberal Unitarian religion. Statements like this, along with his categorical imperative that no person should be used as a means to somebody else's ends, but should be considered an end within themselves, and the fact that he lived in the 18th century, which seemed to put Kant squarely in the category of Enlightenment philosophers. In her recent book, Left is Not Woke, contemporary philosopher Susan Neiman, who studied philosophy at Harvard and taught it at Yale, has some pretty impressive credentials, not only counts Kant among the Enlightenment philosophers, but claimed that the Enlightenment ended with his demise. Enlightenment is a contested concept which means different things even to those of us who study the subject, Neiman says. But here I use the word to refer to an intellectual and political movement that came to flower in 1698 with the publication of Pierre Bell's Historical and Critical Dictionary, an amazing story in and of itself, and ended in 1804 with the death of Kant. That the Enlightenment was so tied into Kant, she's suggesting, that it died when he died. And given what I know of Kant's writings, I agree with Neiman, but am also persuaded by philosopher Stephen Hicks' argument that Kant was the first counter-Enlightenment philosopher. Hicks agrees in his words that reason is a faculty of the individual, and respect for reason and individualism had developed during the Enlightenment. The individual is an end in himself, he says, the Enlightenment thinkers taught, not a slave or servant to others. Again, other Enlightenment thinkers may have agreed, but it was Kant who considered this principle categorically imperative. So it's surprising that Hicks goes on to argue that Immanuel Kant is the most significant thinker of the counter-Enlightenment. Not the Enlightenment. Because he says his attack on Enlightenment reason, more than anyone else's, opened the door to the postmodernism, irrationalist, and idealist metaphysicians. Hence, he continues, Kant marks a fundamental shift from objectivity as the standard to subjectivity as the standard, and was the decisive break with the Enlightenment and the first major step toward postmodernism. Postmodernism is a 20th century ideology that rejects all Enlightenment principles and is, as Hicks says, the end result of the counter-Enlightenment attack on reason. It resulted from a rejection of reason that began in response to the Enlightenment. And since I recently spoke on postmodernism and have already spoken often about the Enlightenment, today we'll leave it with Hicks' very simple explanation that the Enlightenment, which marks the beginning of modernism, is rooted in reason and objectivity. Hence, the rejection of reason and objectivity in favor of emotionalism and subjectivity is a very succinct explanation of postmodernism. For our purpose today, all of this leaves us with a different question to resolve. If reason is a fundamental Enlightenment value, and if the counter-Enlightenment is defined by its attack or rejection of reason, and if Kant said Enlightenment means the freedom to use reason publicly in all matters, how can anyone conclude that he was against reason and call him a counter-Enlightenment thinker? So, to be as succinct as possible, Hicks argues this is so because Kant did not believe that reason is capable of connecting us to objective reality. To put it another way, reason doesn't know what it's talking about. I have to add that line into my script. That was a good one. Most Enlightenment philosophers, like the early Greek philosophers who inspired them, believe that reason enables us to grapple with objective reality, that there is such a thing. But Kant believed we can only reason about our perceptions of reality, which are different from reality itself. And this gave the counter-Enlightenment thinkers, and later the postmodernists, all the justification they needed to discount the validity of all reason and any rational arguments they happened to disagree with or that conflicted with their own logically unsubstantiated ideas. As Hicks says, with Kant then, external reality thus drops almost completely out of the picture, and we are trapped inescapably in subjectivity. And that is why Kant is a landmark. Once reason is in principle severed from reality, one then enters a different philosophical universe altogether. Crazy universe. How many of you have watched? What's the latest comic book movie about the multiverse? What is it? What's the character? Doctor something? Doctor Strange. Yeah. You know, I mean, that's the kind of crazy world without any kind of reason, right? Very chaotic. We're talking about. So for some, this means a universe in which anything goes. Anything is possible. Believe whatever you want or reject anything you want. Doesn't matter. As Hicks puts it, if the rules of the game have nothing to do with reality, then why should everyone play by the same rules? Or think by the same rules? So these two interpretations themselves show a limitation of reason. Both Stephen Hicks and Susan Neiman make sound arguments about the same topic, yet they come up with different conclusions. Notice that I said they both make sound arguments, not merely valid arguments. Right? A valid argument is an argument that is logically structured but is unsound because it has untrue reasons or premises. For example, all ducks are mammals. Daffy is a duck. Therefore, Daffy is a mammal. That is a logically valid argument, but it is not sound because ducks are not mammals. Right? Although Hicks and Neiman point to different instances of Kant's writings, they both use premises that are true, but lead them to very different conclusions about him. Neiman considers him a crucial Enlightenment philosopher, and Hicks concludes that he was the most significant figure of the counter-Enlightenment. When there is such disagreement, logic tells us that there are three possibilities. That they are obviously genuine, merely verbal, or thought to be merely verbal, but really genuine disagreements. So, when we have the same definition of the terms we are using and continue to disagree, then our disagreement is obviously genuine. If disputants agree about what the term gun regulations mean, for example, yet one party is for them and one party is against, they obviously have a genuine disagreement. If, however, they both come to realize the gun regulations they are arguing about refer to better background checks, and both are for better background checks, then their disagreement is merely verbal and can be resolved simply by clarifying the terms. If, on the other hand, the disputants think that their argument is merely verbal, but upon clarifying their terms, they still disagree that one is for better background checks and one isn't, then their disagreement was thought to be merely verbal but is really genuine. Those are the three possibilities. So in the case of Kant, I believe the argument is merely verbal, that what they mean by reason is not the same thing. Although I'm not sure if the argument is between Neiman and Hicks, Hicks and Kant, or Hicks and me. The problem is sophisticated, and it has to do with our understanding of Kant's quality of commitment to reason. Most of the time when we talk about reason as a value, we are referring to our responsibility to reason. That is, to justify our beliefs with sound reasoning or sound reasons. That we ought to hold and explain why we hold certain ideas in ways that make logical sense and are supported by verifiable facts. That's generally what we think of when we use the term reason. That's what we think we're talking about. And that's what Susan Neiman seems to mean when she says Enlightenment thinking is based on reason, not revelation. And what she means when agreeing with Hicks that reason is something disparaged by counter-Enlightenment philosophers and postmodernists alike. And it's what Hicks seems to mean when criticizing Kant for rejecting objectivity and thus severing reality or reason from reality. But I do not believe that this is what Kant meant by saying we must be free to use reason publicly in all matters. Nor do I believe that simply using reason means that we're enlightened, not even when using reason that is both valid and sound. The point Kant was making is that an enlightened society allows its citizens to think for themselves and to express themselves without fear of being ostracized and punished. This is so because more foundational to the Enlightenment than reason, freedom or tolerance is individual dignity. Right? In order to maintain one's dignity, we have to have societies that promote freedom, reason, and tolerance. But it's the dignity we're trying to get at. Reason in this sense isn't about sound thinking, but about all of us respecting the right of every person to think and speak for themselves, to reason for themselves, whether we or the masses or the authorities like or agree with what they say or not. When liberals speak of reason, that's mostly what we mean. Freedom to think and speak for ourselves. That's our value. Of course, we should reason or use reason to consider the quality of all thinking, ours included, which is why liberalism generally relies upon science and evidence. But our reliance upon reason is based more fundamentally upon our belief that human beings can reason, should reason, and should be free to do so without any authority forcing or forbidding what we think. Neiman and Hicks came to different conclusions based upon the same facts, but neither should be disrespected, silenced, and certainly not fired because of this. In truth, Hicks' claims about Kant are most unorthodox, and he is unfairly attacked by postmodernists, as postmodernists are prone to doing to their critics. But among his peers and within his profession, he remains highly respected. That's liberalism, letting people think for themselves, whether we agree with them or not. And this is what Kant was talking about in his essay. Not that we should reason, but that we should allow others to reason without our intervention or anyone's intervention. The freedom to reason publicly in all matters. This is a vital difference to grasp, the difference between thinking well and allowing others to think for themselves. In advocating for the freedom to reason publicly in all matters, Kant isn't suggesting that we should all be more logical, but that we should all be more tolerant. More tolerant of those we disagree with. In this sense, Kant was indisputably enlightened. where, however, he uses his own reasoning to argue that reason cannot assure us of anything that is true, or at least real, Hicks is right to conclude he fundamentally diverged from mainstream Enlightenment philosophers who valued reason's ability to help us better understand objective reality. So between Kant's categorical imperative, based upon the humanistic ethic and idea of human dignity, rooted in the Enlightenment belief in our universal common humanity, and his insistence that an enlightened society must allow its citizens to think and speak for themselves, I must conclude, like so many historians and philosophers have, that Kant was an Enlightenment philosopher, and an inspiring and important one at that. On the other hand, in light of the evidence Hicks puts forward, I must also agree that Kant's arguments diminishing the value of reason itself makes him a landmark that fueled counter-Enlightenment ideology that led to the irrationalism and emotionalism that predominantly characterizes the poor quality of thinking in our postmodern world. Now, I've gone to such lengths to discuss the difference between Neiman and Hicks because I want you to understand that, yes, our beliefs ought to be based upon sound reasoning. But this is no guarantee that our conclusions will be true. Two rational people may come up with very different conclusions about the truth of a matter when this happens. So we need, when this happens, we need the kind of society that Kant advocated for, in which every person is free to reason publicly in all matters. Today, this idea may seem obvious, but saying it, let alone writing it down in 1784, was a tremendous act of courage. In fact, less than 8 years after writing those words, the Prussian king issued an edict forbidding Kant from writing or speaking publicly about religion. In his essay, Religion Within the Bounds of Bare Reason, Kant argued that religion ought to be grounded in reason and morality rather than revelation and church authority. King Friedrich Wilhelm II specifically complained that Germany's most prized philosopher was thinking independently of the church's official dogma and institutional power. So understand that when Kant called for freedom of expression, doing so was dangerous, and no such right existed or had ever existed. It was a novel idea that had yet to be experienced. This explains why such freedom must be linked to reason, because it is reason that those who, with unsubstantiated ideas, fear most. And it is why authoritarians who dictate what others ought to believe spurn reason at every turn and demonize those who use it. Just this week, I discovered a passage in The Oppermans, a 1934 historical fiction about a Jewish family in Nazi Germany. In nationalist Germany, the passage states, there was no worse crime than the profession of reason, peace, and honorable sentiments. The government required everyone to keep a sharp eye on his neighbor to see whether he showed due allegiance to the creed prescribed by the nationalist. There was no worse crime than the profession of reason. Some pretty horrible people have been against reason. And this is historically true. Adolf Hitler did carry out a purge of his nation's intellectuals and academics, along with so many other atrocities. So did Joseph Stalin during the Great Purge in the 1930s and Pol Pot in the 1970s, the Cambodian genocide known as the Killing Fields. Maoist China also in the 60s and 70s. Intellectuals were subjected to public humiliation, re-education, and execution. During Iran's so-called revolution in 1979, intellectuals were associated with Western education and were thus persecuted, executed, or forced to flee the country. Examples like these continue in different places in various ways and go all the way back to well before Kant dared to say that people should be free to speak and think for themselves. To borrow again from the wisdom of Susan Neiman, we must not forget that the Enlightenment emerged from a blasted landscape on a continent soaked in blood. It was a history of waves of plague without cure, and ever-returning religious wars in which countless people died. Women were regularly burned alive and suspected as witches, men thrown chained into dungeons for writing a pamphlet. Into this landscape, the Enlightenment introduced the very idea of humanity that its critics were unable to recognize. That's another sermon. Introduced the idea of humanity. There was no such concept before this, that there was such a thing. We were all so different based upon our tribes and our identities. That's making a comeback. This is one of our Enlightenment principles, that there's something common about all of us, which is why we all deserve freedom. Enlightenment thinkers, she said, insisted that everyone, whether Christian or Confucian, Parisian or Persian, is endowed with innate dignity that demands respect. Everyone. Keeping this brutal history in mind, and the recurring tendency of authoritarian regimes to rid themselves of those that are most likely to think for themselves, we can begin to understand the great courage it took for Kant to write about freedom of conscience 240 years ago. It was not a casual statement. He wasn't merely pontificating or thinking out loud. He was risking everything out loud. Maybe even his own life. In light of this history, it is particularly tragic that many on the left today are also disparaging reason, along with human dignity. Today, many on the extreme left claim they have a right to be protected from hearing ideas they disagree with, because such ideas can harm them by making them feel unsafe. Those on the extreme right who like to ridicule these sorts as snowflakes and label them as woke have no room to talk. They have proven to be just or even worse when it comes to tolerating the ideas that they disagree with, and are also quick to demonize and dehumanize those who express them. Today, we too live in a time like Kant's, where it takes courage and reason, I should say courage to use reason, and to do so publicly. Whether our ideas are called dangerous by those on the right or harmful by those on the left, there is tremendous social pressure just to keep our mouths shut, make things easier, including the potential loss of our reputations and our livelihoods. This is ironic in light of Kant's full statement, which I read at the start. Let me read it to you again. Nothing is required for this enlightenment except freedom. And the freedom in question is the least harmful of all. It's not unsafe. It's the least harmful of all, namely the freedom to use reason publicly in all matters. It is especially troubling and tragic to hear so many on the left, where I stand, now claiming the opposite, that the freedom to reason publicly is harmful, after all, and that reason itself is a form of oppression. As Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Haidt write in The Coddling of the American Mind, their focus on emotional safety leads many of them to believe that one should be safe not just from car accidents and sexual assault, but from people who disagree with them. We shouldn't have to tolerate people who disagree with us. It's scary. Reason is the least harmful of all our rights. Yet it is the opposite of how dictators think, by which I mean anyone who feels they are justified in dictating what others can and cannot say. Liberalism and our historic religion side with Kant that we should be free to use reason publicly in all matters. And today, as in the 18th century, it took some bravery, and it takes some bravery to speak our minds. It's easier just to go along, to get along, as the saying goes. That's a strategy, but it is not a liberal strategy. It is not a Unitarian strategy by any means. We have to be better and braver than that, because that's what the world needs us to be right now, and it is what our religion calls us to be. So think for yourself, but think. Even if your reasoning isn't always perfectly sound. Reason isn't about getting it right in an enlightened society. It's about freedom and courage to say what we think about whatever we want. Kant said, immaturity is the inability to use one's understanding without guidance from another. This immaturity is self-imposed when its cause lies not in lack of understanding, but in lack of resolve and courage to use it without guidance from another. Have courage to use your own understanding. This is the motto of the Enlightenment. Or as fashion designer and businesswoman Coco Chanel more recently put it, the most courageous act is still to think for yourself aloud. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please stand for our last hymn, and then we'll take a short break and then come back for Deb's celebration. Touch the Earth, Reach the Sky, number 301 in the hymnal.
Touch the earth.
offer the benediction words of Mahatma Gandhi. Carefully watch your thoughts, for they become your words. Manage and watch your words, for they will become your actions. Consider and judge your actions, for they have become your habits. Acknowledge and watch your habits, for they shall become your values. Understand and embrace your values, for they become your destiny. Amen. Blessed be. Salam alaikum and shalom.